They said she was too old for marriage, too worn by years, too invisible to be chosen. In the village of red dust and wind-bent acacia trees, where time measured itself in harvests and heartbreaks, 50-year-old Asha had become a whisper people passed with pity and judgment. Children called her auntie before they knew her name. Women half her age avoided her eyes, afraid of seeing their own future reflected back at them. Men spoke of her only in the past tense, as if she had already lived and died without anyone noticing. Once long ago, Asha had dreams too, dreams of love, laughter echoing through a shared home. Hands held during storms, but life had other plans. Her parents died early, leaving her to raise younger siblings. Then came years of labor, sacrifice, and silence. By the time she was free to think of herself, society had already sealed her fate with a cruel sentence: she is too old. Every morning, Asha walked to the river before sunrise, carrying her clay pot, her back straight despite the weight of years. The water was cold, honest, and indifferent, unlike people. It never judged her. She would pause there, watching her reflection ripple and distort, whispering quiet prayers, not for love anymore, but for peace. That morning, however, fate was already moving toward her, armed with dust, blood, and a young warrior's broken pride. When Asha heard the faint sound of a body collapsing near the riverbank, she did not hesitate. She ran, heart pounding, to find a man barely older than her youngest brother once was, tall, broad-shouldered, wounded badly. His armor cracked and stained dark. His name was Kalen, though she would not know it yet. He had fought in the border wars, known for his strength and fearlessness, but now he lay helpless, life slipping like sand through fingers. The villagers would have left him. Some would have robbed him. Others would have feared trouble. But Asha knelt beside him, tore her shawl without a second thought, and pressed it to his wound. She dragged him inch by painful inch to her small mud house on the edge of the village, a place people rarely visited. For 3 days and nights, she fed him broth, cleaned his wounds, whispered encouragement when fever tried to take him. Kalen drifted in and out of consciousness, haunted by battle, saved by a woman society had already discarded. When he finally opened his eyes clearly, the first face he saw was hers, lined by time, yes, but lit with a strength he had never seen in any palace or battlefield. As days passed, Kalen healed, and something deeper began to awaken. He learned her story. She learned his fears, how he felt hollow after years of killing, how victory had never felt like peace. The village noticed too. Whispers turned sharp. Why is a young warrior staying with her? They mocked. Is she trying to trap him? But Kalen stayed. He listened. He laughed with her. For the first time in decades, Asha felt seen, not as a burden, not as a leftover, but as a woman, with value, wisdom, and warmth. When Kalen finally stood strong again, sword in hand, the village expected him to leave. Instead, he turned to Asha and said words that would shake every cruel belief they held. I'm not leaving. I'm choosing. And if this story is touching your heart already, remember, every story you watch here carries a deeper truth about life, courage, and love. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that challenge society and inspire the soul. The village erupted when Kalen made his choice known. Elders scoffed. Women whispered venom. Men laughed openly. A 50-year-old spinster and a young warrior, they said. It is shameful. It will never last. But love does not ask permission, and destiny does not bow to mockery. Kalen stood before the council and spoke with the same courage he once used on the battlefield. He told them Asha saved his life when no one else would. He told them strength is not measured in youth alone, and beauty is not owned by time. He said, "You taught me to fight, but she taught me to live." Those words struck deeper than any blade. Some elders turned away in anger. Others felt something crack inside their long-held beliefs. Life did not suddenly become easy. Asha faced days of doubt, nights of fear that she was dreaming too late. She worried she would be a burden, that one day Kalen would regret choosing her. But Kalen never wavered. He brought her small gifts, a carved comb, wildflowers, stories from his travels. He asked her advice, honored her wisdom, and made her laugh like a girl again. Slowly, the village began to change. Women came quietly to ask Asha how she carried herself with such dignity. Men watched how Kaelin treated her with respect, not pity, and felt ashamed of their cruelty. Even the children stopped calling her names. They called her Mother of Courage. When the wedding day came, it was not grand, but it was powerful. Under the open sky, with the river whispering nearby, Asha stood taller than she ever had in her life. She wore simple clothes, but her eyes shone brighter than gold. Kaelin took her hand, not as a savior, not as a conqueror, but as a partner. The same people who once said she was too old now stood silent, witnessing a truth they could no longer deny. Love has no expiration date. Years later, when battles were over and grey touched Kaelin's hair too, people would speak of them as a legend. Not because of their age difference, but because they proved that society's rules mean nothing when the heart chooses courage over fear. And as this powerful story comes to a close, remember this: there are countless untold stories like Asha's waiting to be heard. If you believe love, resilience, and second chances deserve a voice, subscribe to the channel now. Your support keeps these stories alive, and the next one might change the way you see the world. Years it passed like quiet footsteps on soft earth, and the love between Asha and Kaelin did not fade, it deepened. Time, which once stood against Asha like an enemy, now became her greatest witness. The same wrinkles people mocked became symbols of endurance, and the same age they used to shame her became proof of a life fully lived. Kaelin returned from his final campaign, not as a warrior hungry for battle, but as a man at peace. He laid his sword above the doorway of their home, not as a warning, but as a reminder of the life he chose to leave behind. The village, once cruel and judgmental, now came to them for counsel. Elders asked Kaelin for wisdom, and women sought Asha's guidance, realizing too late that strength does not scream, it survives. One evening, as the sun bled gold into the horizon, Kaelin sat beside Asha outside their home, listening to her slow, steady breathing. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, a place she once believed she would never have. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, the old fear briefly returning. Kaelin smiled, taking her hand, weathered yet warm. "I regret only the years the world stole from you," he replied. "But I'm grateful I found you when I did." In that moment, Asha understood something profound. Love does not arrive early or late. It arrives when the soul is ready. When Asha eventually grew weaker, the entire village stood with Kaelin, not out of duty but respect. Children she once carried water for now carried her blessings. And when her time came, it was not marked by loneliness, but by love so strong it echoed beyond her final breath. Kaelin mourned, but he never broke. He lived on telling their story, not as a tragedy, but as a lesson that no woman is ever too old to be chosen, too broken to be loved, or too forgotten to matter. And as you finish this chapter, remember, stories like this exist to remind us of truths the world tries to silence. Subscribe to the channel to keep these powerful stories alive, because the next one might heal a part of you that words alone never could.